Alright, so now comes the most complicated part of making a registration form that will only show you certain fields depending on what after school program you choose and then what day you choose. So the example I'm going to give, at least for now, is going to be the very simple current Coconut Grove Elementary registration without the different time on Wednesday. So let's just jump into it. So in this after school program section, um, this is where someone will be able to choose the pre-K first grade, second and fifth grade, team tennis, and kids clinics. Depending on which of these they choose, a different time is going to show up. Now mind you, although it's a different time, all the dates are the same according to the form that I received from you guys, and I didn't see any notes about Wednesdays being different times, stuff like that. And I saw that you had 5 times a week for each of them. So the good thing is I didn't have to make a conditional logic for also the lesson days. So since you're doing all of these every day, I can just put this outside of the conditional logic and just say, okay, now I have lesson days Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But let's say, for example, I pick pre-K first grade, I picked my days, now I have to pick my times. Now, in order for me to group them, what I'm going to do is create a new conditional logic group. So each open tag or each open bracket has to have a close bracket. So for example, we have this open bracket here and it has this closing bracket over here in order to enclose it. We have this open P tag with this closing P tag. It's very important. Now in the same way, if I were to group this whole thing as something that will only show for a specific item, I'm going to create a group, a conditional logic item. So the way that I would do it is actually clicking on this conditional fields group, and all you have to do is name it. Now in this particular case, let's just say example. So if I put example, you'll see that it actually changes down there. So insert tag. So I'm going to go ahead and actually just delete this. Now it's just to show you how to put in the group. Now to make it easier for me to make the conditional fields work and put it into the mail, I made sure that anything that had to do with the pre-K times, I made the name cond to denote that it's a conditional field, which makes it a lot easier for this mail section, because imagine trying to read this without that. And so on top of that then, we also have, says CGES, so I know that this is Coconut Grove Elementary School. This is pre-K time, so it has to do with the pre-K to first grade, and it has to do with times. So it's not days and times like it previously was. So this is within a group. So this is the open group tag, and this is the closed group tag. So this will only show if I choose lesson times. If I choose the pre-K to first grade. Now the way that I make sure that rule works, because now I only made the group. The group exists, but there's no rule created yet. I'd go to this conditional fields section, and let me add a new one. So I'm going to go ahead and add new conditional rule. So I would say if, and then I have to make sure that I find the name of the field. So if the CGES pre-K, if the CGES lesson levels, I can say if it equals or doesn't equal. In this case, I'm going to say equals. If it equals, and I have to make sure that I have the exact value. So I'm going to actually go back to form, and I'm going to go ahead and copy, and go back to conditional fields, and I'm going to paste it. So I make sure that I'm not making any mistakes. So pre-K to first grade, then show, okay, then that means I need to show, if I pick on pre-K, I should only show the times that are associated with pre-K and first grade. So I'm going to click on the group that I created. Notice they all say cond in front. Makes it easier for the mail section, not necessarily here. So I'm going to choose cond CGS pre-K times, right? Because I'm choosing pre-K to first grade. Now I already have this rule, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete that for now. And since that was created, I'm just going to click on save just to be sure. And when I go over to the front end of the page, actually, so I'm going to have to open up a new tab. Let's say Coconut Grove. I'm going to scroll all the way down. So if I choose on my second and fifth, changes the times again, changes that. Okay. So notice also that the capitalization is changing. The reason why that's happening is because for each of the groups, I added a new title right before it, and that was to make sure that the formatting was correct. So I have like the correct spacing between these elements here. If I wanted to add more space, I could do that by changing this value to a higher value, but I don't need to do that. So let me actually just make sure that lesson times is capitalized throughout. Okay, see, here's another example. Make sure not to do it for these groups, because otherwise then you have to redo it. You'd have to redo the conditional logic rule. Okay, it's not FIMES, it's times. Okay, just making sure that, okay, that's capitalized, and that's capitalized. So the way that these groups are, this is actually the old form. So let me go back and let's see, there you go, lesson times, and lesson times. So this is the new form, so it doesn't depend on a Wednesday being a different time. If I wanted the Wednesday to be a different time, it would be a little bit more complicated of a setup. So let's go ahead and let's just take a look into it anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and let's look at the old version of the contact form, which has that conditional logic built in with the different Wednesday time. So if I picked on pre-K, first grade, this is going to be the first group for the conditional logic. We have lesson days and lesson times. Now we have, in this particular case, I had changed the lesson days. So actually, let's look at second and fifth. So second and fifth, I know I didn't change it. So we have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, very specific dates. Then I have in here checkbox, okay, checkbox CGES second, fifth grade time, 3:10 to 4 o'clock. But if someone were to pick on Wednesday in a checkbox, then what's going to happen is that this is going to show up. Notice that this is a whole other group. So this group closes and then this group opens. So it's not a group within another group. In this case, then it says Wednesday time, and it's going to show the Wednesday time. So if I were to take a look at what that looks like in the conditional fields section, I guess I broke it. But the way that it would work, if I selected CGES lesson level, if it equals, let's do the CGES second, fifth days, but let's actually find the value. If I do first to fifth grade, go to that, CGS equals that, then I'm going to then show the conditional CGES second to fifth day times. Okay, so now that I have those second to fifth day times, I'm going to do another rule that says if the time that was chosen, so day/times, if it equals, okay, let me just make sure that that is the right one. So I'm going to go back to the form, and okay, so I have my first to fifth grade, and if the, here you go, second and fifth days equals Wednesday, so I need to get the CGS second to fifth days. So if I put in CGS second to fifth days equals Wednesday, then show the second to fifth time Wednesday. And so that would complete the logic for this. So now I know for sure if I choose those, it's going to show if I choose that Wednesday, it's going to show the second to fifth time. And if I choose that lesson level of first to fifth, the reason, by the way, it says second to fifth was because that's the original, but not to be confused. So if I choose that first to fifth grade, it's going to show those days and times for the second and fifth days times, because that's the name of the group, because I had renamed it. Or at least I renamed it in the lesson levels. Then it's going to show the correct values. So when you add intricacies or extra levels of conditional logic, you just need to make sure that you have a subsequent group that is associated with that choice. And you're going to have to make a whole new title for that specific section. So it would have, it would be nice if the conditional logic would be even more complicated in a way that if, for example, if I were to just choose the Wednesday, then it would already know based on my uh, grade level what sort of times are going to be available. But in this particular case, you have to put in each particular title, and it has to be, in this case, Wednesday time to show that this is a separate checkbox. I can't put that same checkbox within this lesson time section. So in order to make that conditional logic happen, just have a different group, add this new title, Wednesday time, and then add this 2 to 5. Now, the way that I made each of these fields is basically copying and pasting each one and just changing the values and then changing the name inside here. So I didn't go through actually pressing this button and typing it in and doing everything individually. I wanted to make sure that the formatting was the same throughout, so I would copy these whole sections. So once you do one of them, when you do one particular grade level, if you copy this whole thing and change each individual item in there, so you change the name, you change the values, you change also again name again, you change the value here, change this name, you're going to have something that works. But very important that before you actually put this up is to test it. Of course, everything needs testing. So that's kind of how you add the Wednesday time or that extra level of conditional logic.